to the Women's March Canada podcast, Making the Equality of Women in Canada the New Norm. This is episode 34, entitled Mind and Body Nourishment. My name is Leanne Castellino, and I'm your host, uniting, inspiring, and leading the charge for the advancement of women across Canada. Our guest this week is Dana Rourke. Dana is a holistic nutritionist, a body image, chronic dieting, and eating disorder recovery coach. She also teaches yoga and is a body trust provider. Her website is reclaimingthewild.com. Dana, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wanted to start off right off the bat asking you, what is a body trust provider?
That is an excellent question. So this is something new that is coming out of Portland, Oregon. And the body trust wellness paradigm has been developed by two women in their clinical practice, Hilary Canavi and Dana Sturtevant. And they together have a business called Be Nourished. So they do work together as a clinical nutritionist and therapist duo to really help individuals heal from body shame, disordered eating, chronic dieting, and eating disorders. And so as a body trust provider, I really help folks to heal their relationship with food and their body and start to leave that body shame behind.
How do you go about doing that? Because I'm going to assume for a moment that the bulk of the people that are your clients are women. So how do you go
Yes, they are. So it's a very individual process. A lot of the work that's involved in body trust has roots in Kristen Neff's work with self-compassion, Brene Brown's work with shame resiliency, and intuitive eating as well. And then one of the other really important aspects of a body trust practice is social justice. So coming at this from a social justice lens and looking at it on a systemic level, not just on an individual basis.
So when you talk about a social justice lens, can you paint a picture for us? What does that entail?
Yeah, so it entails taking a look at the culture that we live in. So, patriarchy and diet culture and all of these ideas, and these systems that we've been socialized in and brought up to believe that really take us away from trusting our own wisdom, from being with our bodies and turning towards our bodies with kindness, as opposed to where we're at right now in the culture, which is very much about telling us we need to control our bodies and we are responsible for the health of our bodies, which, health is very complex and it does not just boil down to what we eat and how we move. So really looking at these ideas and pushing back against them, and especially recognizing those in the world who have been marginalized, stigmatized, oppressed, and really, opening doors there as well in terms of how we treat people, how we treat one another, and how we can move forward in a way that brings us all up together.
Undoubtedly, social media has added a whole new level of layers upon layers of complexity to what it is that you do. How would you go about describing that impact?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I know one of the first things that I offer my clients is, taking a look at their social media feeds and really, kind of doing a little spring cleaning, decluttering, and, kind of coming at it with an eye of saying, what brings me joy here? What makes me feel good about myself? Because a lot of what we follow and what we see really just gets us into that comparison mind, and, keeps us trapped in this cycle of feeling not good enough, and then making a plan, wanting to fix it. And then, the plan isn't flexible to accommodate life, so we ditch the plan, and then we have all these feelings about that, and then we come back to the problem. And so it's really about kind of getting us out of this cycle of dieting and, feeling bad about our bodies and our lives. And so trying to weed out what's in there that's detracting from our own self-worth, and really just focus on putting those in that are going to help to celebrate our bodies.
What would you say then is something that has struck you about the women that you have met over the years and that you've tried to help, about their view of their body image and dieting?
What has struck me? I think the most profound thing for me has been just how, no matter what someone's life looks like on the outside, on the inside, the thoughts and the feelings are very similar. The thoughts of not being enough, not being good enough, not being thin enough, not being successful enough, beautiful enough, whatever that blank is before the enough. And then just the ways in which we blame ourselves for it, instead of taking a critical eye and really looking at the culture and knowing that it's not our fault that we feel this way. We live in a world where the expectations and the standards and all these things that we're given to strive for are just completely unrealistic and unattainable. So here we are, pardon me, and we're all just trying to do our best, and that should be enough, right? And we're here, we exist, we're in these bodies, and that should be enough.
Your work is rooted largely in presenting people with an alternative form of living, an alternative way to live. Mm-hmm. How would you describe that to somebody just hearing those words for the first time? What is at the crux of that?
Yeah, so I would say that the crux of it comes from a realization that I had in my own healing path, which was that my body and my life are first and foremost for my own experience. They're not for others to experience me, right? Like, I'm here for this adventure, not for others to have one of me. And it's really about then, asking yourself, what do I desire? What do I need? And stepping away from weight as a measure of health and success, and saying, if weight size, was not an issue, if my reputation wasn't an issue, if, this pursuit of health that I was supposed to be on wasn't an issue, what would I do to care for myself? What would I want to do to care for myself? And so it's turning towards the body with kindness and compassion, which as women, we always extend to others. And yet we ourselves are the last person that we extend that to. So it's bringing that inwards towards ourselves, and then just, starting to get familiar with our desires.
It sounds so simple when you put it in those terms, but it's interesting because you're talking about the whole person. I mean, food is almost only a little part of it at the end of the day, right? So how do you then go about breaking it into chunks for somebody who is struggling with a very, deep and profound eating disorder, which in many cases can, lead to more serious serious health issues, obviously. How do you
Yeah.
go about that?
So my work prominently is with binge eating disorder and orthorexia, which I have personal history with as well. And the first place that I kind of start with folks is starting to recognize and tease out some of the voices that are kind of taking control over our lives, our actions, and look at, you know, those critical pieces. A lot of times, you know, the way that we talk to ourselves and the things that we tell ourselves isn't coming from the heart. And if it is, it's in a way that's very protective, right? We have these voices that tell us not to do things because they're scary or because we might get hurt. And really they're there to protect us. So it's acknowledging that there's a dialogue happening there. And once we can kind of tease out, you know, what those voices are, what their purpose is, then we can start to kind of tap into our essence and our truth once we can kind of, you know, piece those out. And that's typically where I start is kind of laying the foundation for a new way of communicating with ourselves, because the way we interact with ourselves and the way we interact with food tends to be the way that we do all of our other interactions in life. And so starting from this place of kind of unearthing what's really there and then finding a place for everything else to develop a bit of an awareness is often helpful.
Can you tell us what is orthorexia for people who have not heard that term?
Yeah, so orthorexia is, I guess the simplest way to put it would kind of be uh, an over-fascination, I guess, with healthy food and clean eating, to the point where individuals are very restricted in their eating and will not put anything into their body that is deemed to be, you know, unclean, impure, unhealthy, not organic, and as such, you know, really put limits and rules on what they will take in, and at times won't take in anything if those options aren't available.
You say you had personal experience with that. How bad did it get for you?
Um, for me, it was probably about 5 years that I struggled with orthorexia, and and I didn't even really recognize what was happening at the height of it for me. It wasn't until I had a little bit of therapy a few years later that I realized, you know, what was going on. And you know, one experience that I remember so vividly, I was on vacation with a couple friends and my partner at the time. We were in New York City, and I had recently graduated from nutrition school, and you know, our joke now with some of my friends who were students at the time is that, you know, if we didn't go in with an eating disorder, then we came out with one because of all of the hypervigilance around food. And so we were in New York City, and I remember just having a crying breakdown in the Upper East Side because there was no food. Everything that I wanted to eat that smelled so good, all of the pleasure that I wanted to experience, I couldn't have because I was on this very strict cleanse and this diet for, I don't even remember what now. Yeah, it was awful. And it completely ruined my vacation. Until around the second last day, my boyfriend finally looked at me and said, let's just take a break. Let's go do something fun. Let's go eat, have a cocktail. It'll be okay.
Fine after that?
Pardon me?
And you were fine after that?
Well, I got home and went back right to it, you know, but I allowed myself the freedom to enjoy you know? And so it's, it's a very restrictive lifestyle, and the impacts that it had on me and the impact that I see it have on others socially can be really, really, really painful and really horrible.
So why is it, in your opinion, then, do you think that these eating disorder type issues tend to affect women more than men?
I think that they tend to affect women more than men because our bodies have, well, our gender and bodies have been policed, whereas men's bodies typically have not. Right? So as a woman, our the expectations on how we look and present ourselves, how we express ourselves, is a very, very small window of, appropriateness. And this goes back generations and generations and generations. So to me, and there are, many boys, many men with eating disorders, body image issues, folks in the LGBTQ and trans communities as well. I think that, again, you see in those communities a ton of body policing as well, right? Trying to fit us into this normal box of how we should look and be. And so the research shows that when we restrict and when we suppress, there's some sort of backlash, and things come out in some way. We try to cope in some way. And so I think that is at the root of some of it.
What would you say, in closing, that you want people listening or watching to this interview, what do you want them to leave with? People potentially struggling with such issues that perhaps have not gotten help yet.
Oh, that's a big question. I would say that I would want them to know that it's okay and it's not their fault. That where the culture is at right now, it makes it extremely hard to feel worthy as we are in our bodies. And that being said, there is a different way. In body trust work, we talk about trying different, not harder. And so there is a different way. There is a way to come home to your body and to experience the ease that you seek for yourself.
Dana Rourke, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Your comments are always welcome and encouraged. Please subscribe to our Women's March Canada channel and receive updates every time we upload a podcast or a video interview. Our mission across Canada is to stand together in solidarity with our partners and children for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our country. This is the Women's March Canada podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Women's March CDA. Our website is womensmarchcanada.com. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Leanne Castellino. Have a great day.